Q Review Print Speaking to the Blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @CuneReview, that is @CuandReview. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@cunereview.com. That is INFORMATION@CUENDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday, the 23rd of July 2025, from the business section. Donald Trump gets green light for new golf resort pavilion. This article is by Brian Donnelly. President Donald Trump has been given the green light to build a new pavilion in sand dunes at a Scottish golf resort. The planning permission was granted retrospectively and relates to a building being built at a different location to a site which had been approved earlier this year. The plans for a halfway house at the new location were criticised by one objector who pointed to swamp potential of the site identified by Trump International Golf Course at its Aberdeenshire resort, with drainage system issues then defended. Documents were published on July 4th seeking full planning permission for the erection of a halfway house, retrospective, positioned within the grounds of Many Estate, Balmeedy. Papers published on July the 14th grant permission for the pavilion principally for toilet and food and drink facilities. Dr. Fiona Marshall wrote in May, "I object to this application on the basis of the environmental damage it will cause. In addition, the maps suggest that the building will be sited in an area of swamp vegetation. I assume this will have to be cleared and the area drained for the foundations, and it makes me question how well the sewage treatment plant that they will install will work." Aberdeenshire Council papers state the golf course has had previous permission for the halfway house, which was granted in February 2025. However, the location of the siting has now changed, hence the requirement for a new application. The halfway house is considered to fall within the developments that are permitted, in that it is an ancillary building located within the grounds of an established recreational use. This application is for retrospective planning permission. As part of the process, the planning service undertook a site visit in which the halfway house is nearing completion. The design and scale would not cause any detrimental impact to the character of the area or have an unacceptable impact on the natural environment. Its positioning has been chosen as a practical stop-off point for users of the course, and would sit adjacent to an existing pathway that will service the golf course. The report added, the development will connect to the public water supply. The private drainage system will consist of a wastewater treatment plant with discharge to the Blairton Burn. Surface water will be dealt with by a soakaway adjacent to the building. It also said, it is recognised that the letter of representation has raised concerns over environmental damage and drainage. This has already been addressed in the above report. In conclusion, having regard to the above assessment and to the provisions of the development plan, it is found that the proposed development will not unacceptably impact on the character of the area. Therefore, it is recommended that planning permission be granted. That article was by Brian Donnelly. This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday the 23rd of July 2025, from the business section. Scottish aviation giant hires refugees under UNHCR link-up. This article is by Brian Donnelly. An historic Scottish firm has entered a partnership to link refugees with jobs. Edinburgh-based Menzies Aviation, the airports and airline services giant, said the link-up with UNHCR, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, is to help boost inclusivity. The company hosted a refugee recruitment event in Mexico, which resulted in dozens of people being offered jobs. A senior delegation from Menzies Aviation joined local teams at the event in Guadalajara alongside Anissa Dati, commercial director from the British Embassy in Mexico City. More than 50 job seekers attended, gaining insights and advice to pursue and secure employment in the aviation sector, with 20 being offered employment on the day and a further 15 after the event. It builds on the 19 refugees hired in Mexico since the start of the year. Menzies Aviation operates in 37 airports in Mexico and employs more than 4,000 people, providing ground services to major airline customers. Mexico has increasingly become a place of refuge for individuals seeking international protection. In 2024, the country hosted over 400,000 refugees and asylum seekers. Through its partnership with UNHCR and other NGO organizations, Menzies has successfully hired refugees in Mexico, as well as in the United Kingdom, France, Romania, and the Czech Republic. Beyond recruitment, Menzies is committed to fostering stability and inclusion through practical employee support initiatives, including its employee housing program. Juliet Thompson, Chief People Officer, Menzies Aviation, said, "We are deeply grateful to the Mexican government, local airport authorities, and our partners at UNHCR for their support in making this recruitment event possible. Creating inclusive employment opportunities is a key part of our values as a global employer. We believe in using our reach to make a positive impact and recognize the strength and resilience refugees contribute to our workforce. Through our Casa Menzies housing program, we are proud to invest in our people beyond the workplace, providing the foundation for stability and success. Together, these efforts lead to tangible benefits such as lower turnover, reduced absenteeism, and stronger employee satisfaction." Founded as a bookshop in 1833, John Menzies later became a news distributor, and a series of acquisitions put it into the airport services sector in the 1980s. It sold its distribution arm in 2018 and was acquired by supply chain giant Agility for £763 million in 2022. That article was by Brian Donnelly. This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday the 23rd of July 2025 from the business section. There's 115,000 reasons why Trump should be welcomed to Scotland. This article is by Colin MacLean. Presidential visits to Scotland sometime occasion a warm welcome and general rejoicing, but maybe not when Donald Trump arrives later this month. Controversy surrounds almost everything he does, and protest may dominate headlines. Yet beneath the surface lies a more complex economic reality that Scotland must confront with pragmatism. Many Scottish jobs are linked to US trade and tourism. It is a time for thoughtful engagement by our leaders. Although this is billed as a private visit by the President, he is expected to meet with Scotland's First Minister and the Prime Minister. Behind photo opportunities and headlines will be discussions based on realpolitik, the need to explore common interests and exert influence despite many differences. These meetings, along with further touch points during the September official state visit, can help us to a better understanding of what the new world order means for our economy and people. Little is yet clear on the economic implications of America's new trade policies and Scotland's position within a radically changed global trade structure. The Trump administration is actively reshaping the way the world does business, wherever the US is involved. Unfortunately, the recent UK-US tariff deal is not yet the broadly based trade agreement that would secure jobs for Scottish exporters. A baseline 10% tariff on most goods entering the United States might be less challenging than the EU position, but it has hit growth and jobs. For Scotland, it represents a significant challenge to our transatlantic trade relationship, which generated £3.8 billion in exports to the US in 2024. Exporters have been forced to reroute product and quickly develop new markets. The urgency of this month's discussions is underscored by the imminent review in August of the UK-US trade arrangements. The present temporary agreement is fragile, creating anxiety in many sectors of the Scottish economy, from universities to food and drink. The impact on Scotland's key industries is already tangible. Scotch whisky, which suffered a major hit to sales during Trump's first presidency, when he imposed 25% tariffs, faces renewed uncertainty. The US remains the largest Scotch export market by value, but global trade turmoil is a big headwind for an industry that exports 90% of its product. Similarly, Scottish salmon exports to the US are significant. Worth over £200 million annually, this trade is the second largest market for the product, and the pressure that lies ahead to harmonise with American regulatory standards could fundamentally alter Scotland's economic landscape. The US now views trade imbalances in simplistic terms, regulatory differences much more important than tariff levels. This represents a profound challenge to European standards on food safety, environmental protection, and product regulations. Food standards in particular are contentious, and any changes could have far-reaching implications. Scotland still aims to keep in lockstep with the EU, but may have to make some compromises with Westminster running the negotiations. American investment in Scotland extends far beyond Trump's Gulf properties. The USA is Scotland's largest inward investor, accounting for around 25% of total foreign inward investment in Scotland. More than 650 US-owned businesses employ around 115,000 people across the country. The pharmaceutical sector, financial services, and technology companies in particular have established significant operations ranging from JP Morgan to Amazon and Microsoft. Encouragingly, it seems that some American businesses are actually now viewing Scotland more favourably. If the UK can successfully negotiate a comprehensive trade agreement that provides greater certainty, Scotland could benefit from increased US investment as companies seek to establish operations that can serve both American and European markets from a single location. Anecdotal evidence also suggests that some individual Americans are considering Scotland for potential relocation, attracted by our political stability, social democratic values, and cultural heritage. The relationship also involves exchange of ideas, such as the US is Scotland's top global research collaborator. 80 links between Scottish and US universities and colleges involve staff and student exchanges, and many joint publications. The thousands of US students who come to our universities help to forge long-lasting relationships between the two nations. The controversial nature of Trump's presidency may actually be driving some North American tourism to Scotland. Many Canadians say they have changed their thinking about travelling to the USA. But overall, Scotland's tourism sector is under pressure, as a weak US dollar makes Scotland expensive for American visitors. Combined with new visitor taxes, this means that the sector does not need any new frictions. Trump's approach to international relations reflects a broader strategy to reshape the global economic order around American interests. The traditional multilateral framework that has governed international trade since the Second World War is being replaced by a more transactional system where countries must demonstrate an alignment of interests to maintain favourable treatment. Scotland's relationship with the US clearly matters, but however much it grates to be dictated to, we have relatively few negotiating levers. Even the EU as a whole seems to be in that position at the moment. It will take our leaders all their skill to make the best of the forthcoming meetings. We must find common ground and realize we might learn from new US policies. It seems reasonable, for example, that countries should pay their fair share for what is effectively an American security and financial umbrella. And it took US pressure for the UK recently to drop some surprising tariffs on pasta, pineapples, and fruit juice. In some ways, Trump is pursuing a typical agenda for second-term presidents, recognizing that time and domestic political leverage is not on his side, making foreign policy a bigger focus. US exceptionalism may be unwinding even as it tears up long-standing agreements. In an increasingly fragmented global order, it is more important than ever to protect Scottish interests. When emotion and reason are in conflict, the heart often overrules the head. But this is a time to look beyond personalities. The path forward requires acknowledging uncomfortable realities about American power and Scottish dependence, while working to preserve the values and interests that define Scotland. That article was by Colin MacLean.
This article is from the Herald on Thursday, the 24th of July, 2025. It is found in the Voices section, and the headline is, "Are the Scots more like the English than we will admit?" And the report is by Rebecca McQuillan. Since what feels like the dawn of time, the Constitution has utterly dominated Scottish politics. It electrified the first years of Tony Blair's government. The sense then that Scotland had been denied its rightful destiny, Winnie Ewing famously saying the Parliament was reconvening after a 300-year adjournment, was powerful and persuasive. That feeling was instantly appropriated by the SNP, who injected it with steroids and focused it on dissatisfaction with the union itself. By painting devolution as a staging post, not our true nature, which could only be satisfied by total separation, Alex Salmond split the voting public in two, restructuring Scotland's politics. The parties have been defined as either pro or anti-independence ever since. Constitutional preference decided election after election, until now. Hardly anyone mentions independence nowadays. Those awkward political conversations it used to cause are now about trans rights or Nigel Farage. The Scunner factor and different forms of identity politics are taking over. That has obvious implications for the next Scottish election. Polling numbers are looking bleak for the main traditional parties. The SNP look likely to emerge as a reduced version of the largest party, having lost their swagger and dominance. Labour are straining under the weight of voter disappointment and on a bad day could conceivably come third. The Scottish system was designed to encourage cross-party working, and that will certainly be required. The polls may change too, so Anas Sarwar's ambition to be First Minister isn't quite dead yet, but he will limp into St Andrew's House if he makes it. The really big story is shaping up to be the realignment of certain voters along a new axis, leaving Scottish politics just as polarised, but in a different way, pooled between hard left radicals and the populist right. The possible election of a slew of Reform MSPs is a big change. Their pronouncements are firmly socially conservative, pro-free market, big on public spending, and fiscally dubious but entirely new to Holyrood. Corresponding to them, on the other pole of the axis, will be the Scottish Greens, currently in the middle of a leadership tussle from the radical left soul of the party. The Greens have particular traction among the young and momentum at UK level. 15% of voters even say they'd vote for a Jeremy Corbyn party given the chance, which is probably not very consequential for the Scottish election, but underlines the growing influence of alternative voices and ideas. And all this is happening due to the much-discussed failure of the main parties. In fairness, anyone running the government right now would fail on most of the usual metrics. How does a Chancellor realise people's hopes when public services are crying out for more investment, but there's a debt hangover from COVID and Liz Truss? How do you keep the markets happy while meeting the expectations of backbenchers and weary voters, or suddenly find the cash drastically to increase defence spending without imposing cuts? You can't, as we're all discovering. We wanted hope. Labour offered hope and promised to fix things, but there's been little sign of improvement so far. Keir Starmer was later brutally honest about the state of things and paid a price for it. With the SNP looking tired and compromised, smaller parties are seizing their opportunity. The rise of more radical parties isn't just undermining the Constitution's dominance of Scottish politics, it's undermining the highly dubious but remarkably durable theory of Scottish exceptionalism. Though rarely spelled out explicitly, this belief that Scotland and the Scottish people are irreconcilably different from voters in the rest of the UK has underpinned much of the SNP's independence case. The usual shorthand is that Scotland is more tolerant and left-wing. This difference, such as it is, has always been marginal, with research showing Scottish voters to be slightly more to the left on areas like big government, taxation and immigration. But only slightly. The 2026 election looks like highlighting just how small the difference is. You can see it in the big issues that have recently gripped Scottish politics. Domestic news is dominated by endless stories of under-resourced public services. The big rows have been about the deposit return scheme, business regulation, male-bodied prisoners in female prisons. No one's discussing what national anthem an independent Scotland should have. Who then will govern Scotland next year? There will have to be grown-up cross-party cooperation. The SNP and Labour could both tolerate the Lib Dems and, if they really had to, the Greens, but neither small party may be able to provide enough MSPs to deliver a majority. That leaves the Tories and Reform. The Tories are a non-starter. As for Reform, the SNP have ruled out working with them, while Anas Sarwar has said he's open to good ideas from Farage's party and won't want further to alienate such a significant tranche of voters, who include former Labour supporters. Labour can't ally with Reform any more than the SNP can, for the simple reason that their core supporters would never forgive them. There would, of course, be another potential arrangement: Labour and the SNP, the best buds that never were. In a January poll, the idea was more popular among voters than a Labour-Tory coalition or an SNP Green arrangement. It might gain some momentum as the election approaches. It's still far-fetched, but the very fact it's being surveyed and discussed, the very fact a Labour-SNP partnership no longer seems inconceivable, shows how much the political ground has shifted. It's going to be a rowdy parliament. Independence is never dead. It still holds sway with half of Scottish voters, and the parties will still quake with fear at upsetting their core supporters by making friends across the old divide. Reform is taking most of its support from pro-union parties because the divide still matters. But for now, different issues are surging to the fore and new groupings are emerging in Scottish politics with different preoccupations. It's a new era, but every bit as divisive as before. That report was by Rebecca McQuillan. This article is from the Herald on Thursday the 24th of July 2025. It is found in the Voices section and the headline is "Make Indy Great Again? Why Swinney Should Hijack Trump's Visit," and the report is by Neil Mackay. John Swinney needs a Hail Mary shot. It's not that he's doomed to lose the next Scottish election and see the curtain fall forever on his political career. He'll probably cling on in some minority administration. And then, of course, there's the question, who on earth would replace him? But his administration is weak and anaemic. It's bereft of ideas and energy. That's what happens when you hold power for a generation. The biggest problem for the SNP and Swinney, though, is independence. The leadership has no notion of how to achieve another referendum, and it struggles to explain precisely what independence actually means. When your flagship policy is in tatters, then you're in tatters. If Swinney could find a way to revivify the independence campaign, then he'd see life flow back into his party. Working out how to get people interested in the Yes movement again, whether for or against it, doesn't really matter. It would send a blast of electricity into the neck bolts of this moribund party. That means he must take some risks. The game hasn't gone his way, so he needs to grab the ball and make a mad dash for the goal. An all-or-nothing desperation move. Donald Trump could be the very man to help him score. Trump's imminent arrival in Scotland is just about the last event the SNP wants to deal with. He represents everything they despise, but he's a president whom they cannot risk offending. Swinney will meet Trump. The visit itself is rather ridiculous. It's not an official state visit, but a personal trip, where Trump will wander around his golf courses, Ozymandias surveying his statues. The tour will have a crippling effect on policing in terms of costs and officers working brutal hours to protect MAGA's king when they could be protecting us. There will be protests. Essentially, it's aggravation that Scotland could do without. But, given we're lumbered with it, Swinney should be smart and take advantage of the circus. After all, Trump's odious Vice President, J.D. Vance, took potshots at Scotland's abortion laws, so why not get something in return as payment now? That sounds fair, especially for a president renowned for the art of the deal and turning life into one inglorious transaction. Swinney should quite simply hijack Trump's visit for the SNP's own purposes. When he meets Trump, he needs merely to mention Scottish independence. At the moment, he appears prepared to talk about difficult subjects, the Middle East, Ukraine, and tariffs on Scotch whisky. Just add independence to the list and don't bother telling the Labour government. That's an important part of the Hail Mary strategy. Swinney should shape the discussion in a way that gets inside Trump's psychology. Part of MAGA's ideological universe is the fixation with states' rights, the conflict over where the federal government's power begins and ends. This has an ugly history, all the way back to slavery and the Civil War. It plays into deep state conspiracies. So Swinney could be tricksy, framing Scottish independence as an issue similar to states' rights, but within the UK's borders. Trump is also pretty free and easy when it comes to commenting on the integrity of the borders of other nations. Just ask Canada, Greenland and Panama. Swinney doesn't need to suck up to Trump. He just needs to pour the necessary words into the ear of this very combustible man. If Swinney then emerged from the meeting and simply mentioned in passing to the media that he'd raised Scottish independence, all he'd have to do is stand back and watch the news agenda do what it does. Trump would at some point be asked about the issue. What he may or may not say would essentially be irrelevant as far as the SNP was concerned. If he nixed the idea, then the Yes movement can say it is under attack by this demon from Washington. Every liberal lefty in Britain would immediately feel some pang of sympathy, even if they hated the idea of Scotland leaving the Union. If Trump showed a smidgen of favour to independence, then the debate gets rocket fuel in the tank, and the Tory party and Reform are undercut. If he says something diplomatic, aye, right, like this is an internal matter for the UK, then he still pushes the debate onto the news agenda internationally. The foreign press would start to cover it, and the SNP would find itself once more making the political weather in Scotland, rather than, as it does now, letting the weather buffet the party where it may. Starmer would be caught on the hop, and he and the rest of the Westminster pack would have to start talking about independence. The UK government would have to reiterate its refusal of a second referendum in a very different climate where the US and European media are paying much more attention. Starmer is utterly terrified of Trump, so he'd dance around the issue absurdly, adding more fuel to the media fires. This is a Hail Mary strategy though, so it requires real cojones and skill to pull off. Hail Marys often end in fumbling faceplants if not perfectly executed. So Swinney cannot be seen to cosy up to Trump. He can't play the craven bootlicker like Starmer. Nor can he be seen to endorse a single MAGA policy or anything Trump stands for. Trump is toxic to the SNP's progressive brand. All Trump is, in this case, is a bridge to a goal. The SNP is a wreck at the moment, down on its luck, within a hole in the seat of its pants. It needs to find a way to turn its fortunes around. All it's got, indeed all the party has ever had, is the power which independence can unleash if wielded correctly as a political weapon. Trump is essentially a human jack-in-the-box. With the right winding up, you're guaranteed that he will spring into the air, yammering and causing international ructions. Swinney just has to give the handle a few subtle turns, then walk quickly from the room and leave Trump and the international media to do the rest for him. That report was by Neil Mackay. This extract is from the Herald on Thursday the 24th of July 2025. It is found in the Voices section and is the diary where the extracts are compiled by Lorne Jackson. Wild at heart. The diary was sad to hear of the death of Ozzy Osbourne, the on-off Black Sabbath singer, grandfather of heavy metal music, star of his own reality show, rabble-rouser, hellraiser, problematic personage, Brummie born and bred Gothic geezer, and of course, husband to the long-suffering though clearly doting Sharon. In the anodyne world of modern music, it's doubtful that we'll see his likes again, unless Taylor Swift wakes up one morning and decides to forgo the cornflakes and semi-skimmed milk and nibbles bat for breakfast. Mr. O definitely had his rough edges and notorious moments, but Scots-raised rock critic and LA resident Eve Barlow probably describes him best when she writes, Ozzy Osbourne wasn't a performer like any other. He never broke character. Character never broke him. Wise words about a wild man. Wipeout. A diary mention of the Sistine Chapel reminds Bert Huliston of visiting Rome and meeting two Dublin women. When Bert revealed he'd previously been to the city, they agreed to let him be their guide. After seeing many famous landmarks, it was time for the Sistine Chapel. Our correspondent left his new pals in the shade and went to the ticket booth only to be informed that the chapel was closed for the rest of the day. Bert told his pals. When they asked why, our mischievous reader said, "My Italian's not that good, but the guy said something about painting the ceiling." Bert expected visible outrage regarding this desecration of great art. Instead, he got a "that's a shame" from one woman and a "will we have time to get to the Trevi Fountain" from the other. Michelangelo was surely spinning in his grave. Fighting talk. A pal of Alana MacDonald was discussing a dispute she was having with her neighbour, leading her to conclude, that's the problem when you don't have your own private army. You have to compromise over everything. Being nosy. An English company called Northern Soul is producing a range of unusual scents, including Mam's Washing and Grandad's Allotment. David Donaldson wonders what quirky smells would be most reminiscent of a Scottish childhood. Tramcar Sparks, he suggests, and also Chip Shop Newspaper and Clarty Clays. And finally, Animal Tragic. Puzzler of the Day from Simon Roberts. Question: why don't dinosaurs make good pets? Answer: because they're dead. That concludes today's extracts from the diary compiled by Lorne Jackson.
The Herald on the 25th of July and the Voices section. Herald Diary. Marriage, no sorry, he's born to love Ozzy by Lorne Jackson. Metal Musings. We've mentioned the sad death of Black Sabbath frontman Ozzy Osbourne. I was a huge fan of heavy metal music back in the day, says reader Eric Spears. I have the t-shirts, the albums, the long greasy hair and the zits of every committed fan of the genre. Then I started to date a girl who did not share my musical tastes. Even so, she wanted to take the relationship to the next level, recalls Eric, who realised this was the case when she said to him during a romantic dinner, "The only heavy metal I like is a ring on my finger." I dumped her soon afterwards, admits Eric. I was far too young to be thinking of marriage. Besides, I had only had eyes for Ozzy. Boxing clever. Nostalgia ain't what it used to be, as they say. Reader Ed Chambers was telling his 7-year-old grandson about the 1970s, an era that preceded the communications revolution, when all phones had dials and no screens. They were also squat and boxy, about the size of a well-fed puppy. If phones were that big, how did you carry them around? Asked Ed's amazed grandson. Were pockets extra large so you could stuff them in your trousers? Wheelie fast. One Saturday afternoon, Christina Morton was enjoying a browse around Glasgow's Silverburn shopping centre when she spotted the strangest sight. A chap carrying a unicycle under his arm, jogging down the concourse. Well, that's something you don't see every day, said Christina to a security guard standing next to her. Indeed, replied the security guard, perhaps not getting her drift. You're not allowed to run in here. Nifty wee numbers. Having discovered that an English company is producing a range of scents recalling times past, we're wondering what Proustian smells best evoke a Scottish childhood. David Donaldson suggests warm gutties or school cabbage, the kind that lingered in the corridor till dinner time. Funny peculiar, when he was a child, Bob Douglas was treated cruelly by his dad, who couldn't resist bombarding his son with a variety of wacky and woeful wisecracks. Bob could only groan piteously and beg for mercy, which never arrived. Years later, said Bob, I've at last figured out why they're called dad jokes, because they're told by grown men. Buzzy Bass, grown spent G-R-O-A-N. Buzzy Badinage. On the subject of ditzy, daffy gags, here's a doozy from reader John Ward. What kind of bee can't make up its mind? A maybe. One for Bob Douglas's dad, we think. and that was by Lon Jackson. The Herald on the 25th of July and the Voices section. Ozzy Osbourne lived a life that feels impossible to put in rear view, by Derek MacArthur. As Ozzy Osbourne passes away at the age of 76, putting his life in the rear view is quite an alien, Herculean task, because how best to sum up a life so unique and so hell-bent on never being repeated? There's no comparison you can make, and little call for the next Ozzy to come along and replace all that he has built. He was a core part of the nucleus of something far greater than himself, while continuing to guide and mentor the monster that he helped create. It's a testament to how much of a cultural force he was, how many people out there implicitly understood him. Osbourne was never locked into the time frame of his successes, nor reliant on the easy blessings of nostalgia, like most figures in our cultural iconography. There was always a generation of teenagers in wait, ready to take the mantle and carry on all that he represented within themselves. The sheer influence, not just on music, but on people as a whole, is indescribable. There's been endless discussion over who or what originated heavy metal. Was it one of the early harder-edged bands like Deep Purple or Led Zeppelin, or something less obvious like Blue Cheer's gritty 1968 single Summertime Blues? However, the whole discussion seems like blatant distraction from the one true culprit, the debut album of Black Sabbath. Everything that could possibly be considered heavy metal is on that 1970 release. It's all there, served up helpfully in one neat package. The haunting eeriness of the cover art, the thunderous rain and bells of its opening track, the devil tones and tritones of Tony Iommi's guitar, and of course the nasal shrill of Osbourne projecting the dark tales of wizards and nightmarish figures in black. He understood the true dramatics of rock music before any of his peers did. He knew that for a group like Black Sabbath to succeed, he had to buy in and cultivate the mythos himself. Osbourne was never much of a singer. He was, by his own admission, not much of a musician at all. His initial opening into Black Sabbath was predicated on the simple basis of being the owner of a PA system. It made him useful for getting gigs. But he could perform, and he could forcefully bend his limited range to the will of a song. And it certainly helped that he had a knack for playing into the attention, an instinct for the theatrical of turning a life of raucous intrigue into headlines and long-enduring artistic persona. He was someone who could always manage to turn limitations into weapons. After being fired for Black Sabbath in 1979, Osbourne expected to burn through his remaining money holed up in a hotel room with cocaine and then return to his parents in Birmingham, ready to rejoin the dole queue as if none of his rock star success ever happened. His manager and future wife Sharon pulled him from the mire and guided his career forward on a personal level. But musically, it was a young guitarist named Randy Rhoads who became his muse, providing the many iconic musical moments that drove reaction to his early solo career. Rhoads was the ingredient that gave the character of Ozzy a fresh air, a new musical dimension for him to dive in and explore. As much as Osbourne benefited from the surrounding musicians, they too saw benefit. His band was often seen as a stepping stone, a boot camp experience for future aspirations. Many now famous heavy musicians were well trained in the Ozzy camp. Osbourne never lived as an island unto himself. Much of the success and the drive relied on who he was surrounded by, and the relationship between himself and his guitarist was always paramount. His long solo career, which could fluctuate between tremendous highs and some garish lows, depended much on the collaborative space. His legacy well and truly stands on its own, yet it's an essential part of his story to remember the contributions of those without their names emblazoned on the marquee. Everyone already knows the mystical Prince of Darkness who bit heads off bats and inspired satanic worship in the youth. The stories are out there, and they are endless. It was media creation that he kept well and truly fed. It was so persuasive that he could parlay that into quite the media success of its own. His later years saw him becoming a big-time festival promoter, reality TV star, and a general reference point in culture for everything dark and heavy. Osborne was more than happy to play into the fantasy and mystique of his persona and all the chaos that it created. After all, it was not quite the life that a factory worker from a post-industrial city could have imagined for himself or for anyone else. And that was by Derek MacArthur.
From the Herald, Monday, 20th of July 2025. Sports section. Prime Minister congratulates Lionesses on Euros win. By PA News Agency. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has congratulated England on retaining their European Championship crown. England beat world champions Spain 3-1 on penalties in the Euro 2025 final after a 1-1 draw to defend the title that they had won 3 years ago. In a post on X, the Prime Minister said, "Champions, congratulations at Lionesses. What a team, what a game, what drama. You dug deep when it mattered most and you've made the nation proud. History makers." The Prince of Wales was spotted in the stands applauding and celebrating with those around him, including his daughter, Princess Charlotte. William was among those that heaped praise on striker Michel Aguiman, who was named Young Player of the tournament. As the presentation ceremony took place, William exchanged words with Aguiman, appearing to say, "Well played, fantastic, well done." That article was by PA News Agency.
From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 28th of July, 2025, from the Voices section. Rural Scots are right. It is time to halt onshore wind farms. Article written by Alan Simpson. Almost as soon as he touched down at Prestwick Airport last week, President Trump had a pop at Scotland's onshore wind farms. He claimed that he could see them everywhere as Air Force One made its final approach on Friday and urged the Scottish government to halt them. Of course, the President's antipathy towards wind farms is well known, which may or may not stem entirely from an offshore wind farm near to his Aberdeenshire golf course. But does he actually have a point? Has Scotland become saturated with wind farms, and is it time to pause? Certainly many across rural Scotland would agree with the President. Now, an unprecedented movement of 53 community councils are demanding a summit with energy ministers in a fight to pause infrastructure projects in some of Scotland's most picturesque areas. They claim there is a barrage of major renewable energy proposals with more than 700 live applications in the Highland Council area alone, ranging from wind and hydro projects to energy storage and transmission grid plans. They add that they are being overwhelmed by multiple complex major applications from well-funded overseas developers. According to the group, it has become a David and Goliath experience, with concerns raised that local democracy has been overridden. The convention now wants the Scottish Government to undertake an inquiry to address the cumulative impact of all major renewable energy infrastructure developments on the communities and landscape, fearing projects may hasten depopulation in some areas. In June, 300 gathered in Bewley near Inverness in a public meeting to discuss concerns over feeling disregarded over the wave of projects. There were delegates from over 50 community councils, collectively representing 72,000 people. Among the most controversial are plans for a so-called super pylon plan, which was to run for over 100 miles across some of Highlands and Aberdeenshire's most picturesque areas to enable significant growth of renewable energy and support transition away from fossil fuels. Scottish and Southern Electricity Networks Transmission, SSEN, which owns, operates and develops the high-voltage electricity transmission system, unveiled the strategy 3 years ago, which it says was a critical project of national significance, as it has been identified as essential to deliver government targets for offshore wind. The project at that point was to involve building a new 400 kilovolt overhead line connection between Bewley and Peterhead to enable the transmission of renewable power into the network for onward transmission to areas of demand further south. They would transmit the electricity on wires carried on a system of mainly metal towers and large substations. SSEN was asked how big the pylons would be, after a previous plan involving 165-foot super pylons was mothballed 5 years ago in the wake of environmental concerns. The new pylons at that point were expected to be on average even taller, at 180 feet. The convention is now planning a summit for Inverness and wants Scottish Energy Secretary Gillian Martin and UK Energy Minister Michael Shanks, as well as Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes, to attend. Highland Councillor Helen Crawford, who was a key convention organiser, said communities felt powerless over the projects. She said, "This is a significant representation of thousands of people across the Highlands, and it is fair to expect our leaders to advocate for them at Scottish Government and UK Government level." In response, Morag Watson, Director of Onshore at the industry body Scottish Renewables, said, "Scotland's renewable energy industry is committed to delivering a lasting legacy for local communities, and we will work with all stakeholders to achieve the right outcomes for the country as we build a fairer, cleaner and more secure energy system." Of course, there is a degree of NIMBYism at play here, as many people love the idea of renewable energy schemes until they pop up and spoil the view out of their kitchen window. However, you just have to look at the UNESCO World Heritage Site of the Flow Country in Sutherland and Caithness to see the damage that can be done by onshore wind farms. Many small projects have been approved on the peatlands, which will cause incalculable damage to the environment as a whole. Onshore wind farms are not as environmentally friendly as some will lead us to believe. They are made of plastic, after all. They are also normally sited in peatlands, which will release goodness knows how many tons of carbon dioxide when they are disturbed to drill holes for the cement to keep the turbines in place. Wind farms have their place in the energy mix and are undoubtedly here to stay. They are also far better than coal and gas-fired power stations. However, with the number of offshore arrays currently operational, with many more planned, maybe it is time to pause new onshore ones. It is arguable now to see how vital they would be for the UK's electricity supply. Some large wind farms, such as Whiteley in East Renfrewshire, are now hugely popular places for recreation, such as walking and cycling, whereas before there was just bleak moorland. Thousands of local communities have also benefited hugely from wind farm proceeds, but that shouldn't be used as a sweetener to get locals on side in future. Wind farms can already provide more than 100% of electricity supply on certain days, so it is hard to argue that we need any more. Offshore wind will provide even more in the future, along with the other more conventional sources such as nuclear and hydro. There have been great strides made in recent decades away from fossil fuel to renewables, and that should be warmly welcomed by everyone. Sadly, this has come at a cost to some, though the overall benefits far outweigh the downsides. But maybe it is time to halt onshore wind farms before the downsides outweigh the benefits. That article was written by Alan Simpson and read to you by Elizabeth.
From Herald, Scotland, 23rd of July 2025. From the STEM section of the business section. Cold War era building repurposed to boost UK space plans. Article by Mark McDougall. An armoured building built for the Cold War is to be repurposed as a base for cutting-edge rocket testing and teaching. The facility, close to the Mull of Kintyre, is called MacLab and will open on the site of the former RAF Machrihanish Air Base near Campbelltown. It was established by University of Glasgow researchers and is being backed by close to £500,000 funding from industry, including matched contribution from the UK Space Agency. It will play a key role in supporting the research and development of new rocket engines. Researchers will also be able to fire experimental rocket designs and gather data using MacLab's custom-built test stand. MacLab will also be able to help establish the next generation of rocket engineers through specialist training, including a University of Glasgow-led programme called Rocketry Research Teaching Training. Dr. Krzysztof Bzadik and Professor Patrick Harkness at the University of Glasgow's James Watt School of Engineering partnered with space technology experts Exotopic to design and build the MachLab facility. Professor Harkness said, MachLab is ready to play a key role in the UK's strategy to return to vertical launch, ensuring that students and researchers can access hot fire facilities in a safe and controlled environment. MachLab will allow us to cooperate with other countries, establishing or re-establishing their access to space. We have already had visitors from South Africa, and we expect to welcome partners from Australia in the near future. The UK is returning to vertical launch and will be going to the stars. We are building that future here, today. Jack Tuft and Jack Davies have also been key members of the team and are currently PhD students at the University of Glasgow. Mr. Davies said, being part of the team to make this facility come to fruition has been a great experience, and it will enable research for spaceflight and planetary landing. The facility has already hosted a test fire of new 3D printed rocket engines designed by Jack Tuft, which have an advanced cooling system. MachLab will enable the development of rocket engines using solid, liquid and cryogenic propellants designed to carry payloads into space in the future, with the rocket test stand allowing researchers to fire prototype rockets while they remain safely locked down and stationary. The lab was originally built in the late 1980s as part of a refueling complex for US Air Force strategic bombers. Dr. Bzdik said, MachLab has been 2 years in the making, with all the systems required to operate a liquid bipropellant rocket engine being created from the ground up. We're excited to be ready to start making our mark in rocket research, development and teaching in Scotland. Patrick and I are very grateful to our colleagues Jack Davies and Jack Tuft and the many others who have helped us in countless ways since work on MachLab began. Andy Gray, CEO of Exotopic, said, This has been a fantastic opportunity to partner with some of the UK's leading researchers at the University of Glasgow to develop a world-class facility that provides a key capability within our unique aerospace R&D offering at Machrihanish Air Base. We are looking forward to welcoming national and international researchers from academia and industry to our site, growing this R&D service and creating more jobs and opportunities in the area. Matt Archer, Director of Launch at the UK Space Agency, said, Facilities like MachLab strengthen our launch ecosystem, helping build the skills, infrastructure and innovation needed for a resilient UK launch capability. By supporting rocket engine testing and inspiring future engineers, it lays the groundwork for the UK to lead in launch. The UK Space Agency is proud to have supported MachLab's development as part of our broader commitment to growing the UK's launch sector. And that article was written by Mark McDougall. From Herald, Scotland, 22nd of July 2025. From the STEM section of the business section. Scots artist develops cosmic ray instrument for fringe show. Article by Josh Pizzuto Pamako. Cosmic rays used to explore the pyramids are to be turned into music during a series of shows at the Edinburgh Fringe next month. University of Glasgow physicist Dr. David Mahon has teamed up with artist Lomond Campbell to create the muonophone, a new instrument which uses extraterrestrial particles to create sound. Special performances involving Scottish musicians Catherine Joseph and King Creosote will take place on August the 3rd and August the 5th respectively. The particles, known as muons, are used to generate in-depth 3D pictures of structural interiors, which help researchers see inside dense materials, such as the pyramids of Giza. Mahan said, "Working with Lomond to expand the scope of that research, generating sound alongside images while he plays along with cosmic rays has been a fantastic experience. I'm looking forward to seeing how audiences engage with the muonophone during the performances and the installation during the month of August." The series of live performances entitled Muo, featuring the muonophone's audiovisual output, will be held at Edinburgh's French Institute during the month of August. After the performances conclude, the French Institute will continue to host the muonophone until the 25th of August, giving visitors the chance to see the instrument for themselves. Several events funded by the Institute of Physics in Scotland will also be held, where PhD students from the universities of Edinburgh and Glasgow will discuss the science of muons with visitors. Tickets to the live show cost £10, while concessions are £8 and family tickets cost £6. A statement on Campbell's website reads, "Using muon detectors, Muo captures cosmic radiation from deep space, transforming it into reactive sound and entrancing live visuals. Performing with this one-of-a-kind handmade instrument, the muonophone, Lomond creates a constantly evolving sonic landscape, joined by special musical guests throughout the festival. Blending art, science and sound in a way you've never seen before, Muo is a cosmic journey not to be missed." Muons are generated when cosmic rays collide with the Earth's atmosphere and break apart. Special devices known as muon detectors pick up the presence of the particles as they pass through various materials. The muonophone reacts to the detection of muons by triggering pre-prepared sound and visualizations. As cosmic rays from deep space shape the muonophone's outputs, Campbell will play live keyboard parts to accompany the machine's soundscapes. Dr. Mahon of the University of Glasgow's School of Physics and Astronomy noted, "I've been working on muon-related research at the university for more than 15 years now, finding new ways to harness cosmic rays to see inside objects. A university spin-out company called Linkios Technology is now using muography to provide industry with detailed 3D images of the interiors of structures which are impossible to create using other methods." Campbell added, "When approached by the University of Glasgow to work with their muon detecting technology, I jumped on it. There is a score being constantly written by the nuclear activity of the cosmos, and with muon detectors we can listen into that and then interpret it sonically and visually. I find that whole concept stirring and want Muo to instill that same sense of wonder in people who come to experience the live performances and the installation. What begins as an idea to make an instrument called the muonophone has grown into a fully immersive audiovisual experience called Muo, thanks to support from Made in Scotland, Sonica Glasgow and the French Institute." According to the National Institutes of Health in the United States, muography has a range of uses, including in the fields of geoscience, nuclear safety and security, and civil engineering and archaeology. One of the most well-known applications of muography is the Scan Pyramids project, which has mapped the inside of the Egyptian pyramids and led to the discovery of several plane-sized voids within the 4,500-year-old structures in 2018. At the time, Mehdi Tayyoubi, Scan Pyramids project co-founder and president of the Heritage Innovations Preservation Institute, told The Independent, "It could be composed of one or several structures. Maybe it could be another grand gallery. It could be a chamber. It could be a lot of things. It was hidden, I think, since the construction of the pyramids." The rays can also be used to image the inside of volcanoes, nuclear storage facilities and blast furnaces, and now power musical instruments at the Edinburgh Fringe. And that article was written by Josh Pizzuto-Pomacco.
This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday the 30th of July 2025 from the Voices section. Is this crude new podcast really what BBC Scotland should be making? This article is by Alison Rowett. Next Wednesday, the BBC will treat us to one of those surreal moments it does so well. The occasion is the new series of MasterChef, hosted by John Turrode and Greg Wallace. Yes, the same John Turrode and Greg Wallace who binned recently. Yet here they are again. Ta-da! The series was filmed last year before the scandal broke. The BBC says it is only fair to contestants to show it. They, after all, did nothing wrong. It will be weird, though. At first, viewers will not quite believe what they are seeing. I had a similar experience with a new homegrown BBC product, Situationships. It's a podcast hosted by author and nurse Sophie Gravia and author and television personality Christine McGuinness. Made at BBC Scotland's Pacific Quay HQ, each new half-hour episode is available on BBC Sounds and fully visualised on the BBC Scotland channel and BBC iPlayer. Gravia and McGuinness are agony aunts, advising viewers on everything from flirty text messages to friendships gone stale. And I do mean everything. I refer those interested to the story about the first date and the poppered bodysuit. The opening titles are done in the soft focus style of those adverts for adult stations you'd see in the early days of multi-channel television. It's all in keeping with the show's up for a laugh attitude, as the duo help viewers navigate the toughest, most outrageous and downright weird scenarios that life can serve up. Now, at this point, I could say something snarky involving the phrase Reithian values. But let's be grown-ups here. Situationships could have been precision engineered to have the likes of me collapsing on the fainting couch we keep in the front parlour for such occasions. As McGuinness says, on this pod, anything goes, and that includes F-bombs. Adding to its defence, BBC Scotland is only doing what everyone else is and jumping on the podcast bandwagon. Why not? We cannot get enough of them. What was at first a form of cheap radio has migrated to television and online, and now it's coming to an auditorium near you. If you want to see Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart in The Rest is Politics as the SEC Armadillo in Glasgow in November, for example, a full-price ticket was being advertised yesterday at close to £90. As for the swearing on situationships, you hear similar on Miss Me, Lily Allen and Makita Oliver's podcast, and they are up for a British Podcast Award. To recap, podcasts are of the moment, potentially lucrative, suit the changing ways viewers and listeners consume content, And swearing on radio and TV is nothing new. You can even hear the US President doing it on the news. Put it like that, and BBC Scotland should be congratulated on taking the initiative with situationships. It was, after all, its producers who went to Gravia with the idea. Put it like that, and people like me ought to wind our necks in. It's just one show, after all, and the BBC is a broad church that caters for many different tastes. Moreover, having watched every episode so far, I can say Gravia and McGuinness are a likeable, funny duo, and good luck to them for earning a crust, any crust, in this media landscape. Having said all that, why does this feel like a canary in the coal mine moment for BBC Scotland? Let's start with the swearing. Not cool, particularly on screen. Swearing is fine, if not to everyone's taste, if it's a drama or comedy. In some programmes, The Thick of It or Succession, it has been raised to an art form. But most people would flinch if someone swore loudly in a supermarket or another public place. The same applies to broadcasting. Two people sitting in a studio swearing is ugly, jarring, and unnecessary. More depressing than the swearing is what Situationship says about BBC Scotland's direction of travel and what it thinks audiences want. This is a channel, remember, that asked for and received permission from Ofcom to make deep cuts in its peak time news provision. Out went the hour-long and well-regarded The Nine. In came a half-hour news reheat show at 7 p.m. on BBC Scotland and the Scotcast podcast. The BBC said the changes would play to our strengths as an innovative broadcaster that delivers high-quality journalism to audiences across all our platforms. How's that working out then? One growth area is true crime podcasts, which admittedly BBC Scotland does well. But there are quite a few now, among them a recently announced 6-part series on the late heroin dealer Mags Haney. Any more true crime and it will be back to the tired old days when the west of Scotland was known for nothing more than gangs and violence. BBC Scotland is also the channel that swung the axe on River City. When viewers complained, they were told this was all to the good. BBC Scotland was keeping up with the changes in the industry. No one wanted long-running series anymore. The money would be going instead on short-run, Netflix-style, high-quality, there's that phrase again, dramas. And anyway, River City wasn't making the numbers and did not offer value for money. I asked BBC Scotland for viewing and listening figures for situationships without success. Since it looks like it costs about 50p to make, the show probably ticks the box marked value for money. And so a precedent is set. Cheap is in, cheap is doable, cheap is good. No one benefits from such an approach, least of all fans of River City, many of them elderly, or the many working-class youngsters who might have got a precious start in the industry via the soap. But never mind the losses. Let's have a chortle at situationships instead, because that's what BBC Scotland thinks we want. Funny thing is, I don't know who situationships is for, and I'd bet BBC Scotland doesn't have a clue either. The Holy Grail 18 to 25 cohort would find it laughable. It's just another ill-considered leap into an already crowded market, one that risks dragging standards down further at a time when they have never been more important to audiences and the BBC. Whatever future was imagined when the BBC Scotland channel was launched, It was surely not this. That article was by Alison Rowett. This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday the 30th of July 2025 from the Voices section. Myra Black typified much of what is wrong with today's politicians. This article is by Callum Steele. There was every danger that the resignation of Myra Black from the SNP could have been one of those events that passed entirely without notice. Political parties, after all, whilst rarely shy in boasting about growth in membership or the courting of high-profile supporters, tend to be more circumspect in what they say when things start to go the other way and household names stop paying into the coffers. But like all resignations, they mean nothing if they aren't accompanied by publicity-creating statement to announce it, and are usually a less than subtle way of settling a few scores on the way out of the door. Myra Black's resignation, reported exclusively by the Herald, was different. She took a general broadside at multiple issues she disagreed with, but a Geoffrey Howe or a Robin Cook evisceration it was not. Like much of the promise a younger Myra Black showed, the final departure failed to deliver and was met with a shrug of the shoulders and a general so what from so many. Predictably, there was no hiding from the LGB and TQ quagmire issues that have now become synonymous with the SNP. Indeed, there is more than a hint of irony that one of the main reasons cited by Miss Black for walking was what she sees as the SNP's rollback on trans rights, something I'm certain her fellow resignee Joanna Cherry would have spat her tea out on reading. In more ways than either would care to admit, Black shares a trait with her long-time political honourable friend, whilst Miss Cherry's resignation from the SNP was on the cards for some time as a result of her deplorable treatment within the party. It's fair to say Miss Black's loyalty to the party that gave her a profile and made her a kind of household name was on an equally shaky ground once the ideology of the campaigner met the reality of pragmatic politics. Her reported threat to publicly resign on the eve of the 2023 Hamilton West by-election in a bid to secure a nomination for one of her advisers to succeed her would have seen any serious party hoofing her unceremoniously onto the political streets. A fervent critic of the toxic Westminster culture, she seemingly had little hesitation in deploying some of its grubbiest tactics when the ends worked in her favour. To be fair, and whilst there was little doubt that Miss Black was, and indeed remains, a skilled and passionate orator, I was always slightly sceptical about the future leader tag that was applied to her within a matter of months of making a name for herself within the party ranks. Her election in 2015, whilst monumental both in terms of her tender years and that she defeated the shadow Foreign Secretary Douglas Alexander, was not in reality that remarkable when set against the political hurricane that all but obliterated Labour of the Scottish electoral map. To plagiarise the well-hackneyed phrase, you could have put a yellow rosette on a monkey, and in many cases they did. Black was a mere 20 years of age when elected, and typified much of what is wrong with many of the public servants of today. They come from an ideological and puritanical world, for they have never had to be pragmatic, as all the hard yards have been done by those who care little about being in the limelight. The need to continue to build consensus in in the way the 20, 30, 40-year campaigners and activists on whose backs they rode to victory on was something they were never going to do. There were new days, new beginnings, where a gospel was to be preached. If you didn't agree, there was no need to debate. Dissent was heresy, pure and simple. Besides, there were plenty in the echo chamber who agreed. The enlightened were not only the voices that were listened to, they were the only voices listened to. Black was not so much an uncompromising politician, but a no-compromise politician. She was a very public example of the kind of thinking and ideology that had slowly but systematically infected many of our public services and institutions. We are seeing one of the very worst examples of that playing out in all its glory and unedifying details at the employment tribunal brought by Sandy Peggy against NHS Fife and its transgender doctor Beth Upton. While I agree with Mhairi Black that Scotland should proudly grow its reputation on the world stage, you'd be hard-pushed to find many headlines you'd want to boast about since 2014. Whether we like it or not, most of them come down to a dogmatism and hostility dressed as piety that Black and so many like her have championed. Edinburgh rape crisis, Isla Bryson, Amy George, gender self-ID, the failed attempts to criminalise offensive words, the continual dog's breakfast over how to record the sex of rapists, and the basins full of word soup spouted out by standing armies of what are increasingly turning out to be idiots to avoid answering the "what is a woman" question, are quite legacy for the no-debaters. I'd have thought that each of these examples, egregious in their own right, would have been enough to stir the potential for moments of reflection, but that is not the way of the modern progressive world. As we are seeing what was a successfully cowed public mood beginning to shift, the willingness of the sane people who had for so long been holding their wheesht to say, "Enough of this madness," has grown from muttering in living rooms to choirs of voices being quiet no more. Mhairi Black and countless like her wanted to change Scotland, and there is little doubt they have done so. The trouble for them is that they don't like what the fruit of their labour has produced. Absent a willingness to change course, or, dare I say it, seek to persuade that their vision is a better one, it's time to get out of the way and leave the hard work of campaigning to others. Who knows, after another 30 years of folk undoing the damage that's been done, that might be time to come out from the shadows once more. That article was by Callum Steele. This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday, the 30th of July 2025, from the business section. Coffee shop next to popular city park put on market. This article is by Brian Donnelly. A coffee shop next to a popular park has been brought to the market. The agent said the trading location ensures good footfall all year, but especially during the summer months when this area hosts many events and festivals. Cornerstone Business Agents is handling the leasehold for Mr. Coffee next to the Meadows in Edinburgh. The agent said, Mr. Coffee enjoys a prominent trading location in the Tollcross Meadows area of Edinburgh on Brougham Street. This is a popular area for bars and restaurants and is close to Lothian Road, the financial centre of Edinburgh, as well as being close to the affluent neighbourhoods of Bruntsfield and Morningside. The agent also said, our client created this business from scratch just a short time ago and has only reluctantly placed it on the market due to personal circumstances. It has already built up a loyal following, with regulars appreciating the quality coffee on offer, along with traditional pão de queijo, savoury coxina, and sweet treats like the Prestigio cake. It's a welcoming spot with the opportunity to try many delights from South America. The cafe's colourful interior and relaxed atmosphere make it a great place to unwind, catch up with friends, or enjoy a quiet moment over coffee. The agent added, "The trading location alongside the meadows ensures good footfall all year, but especially during the summer months, when this area hosts many events and festivals." The Toll Cross area is an up-and-coming location thanks to the increasing development spreading out from Edinburgh city centre. The open green spaces of the Meadows and Brunsfield links are just a short stroll from the business, whilst the Quarter Mile district and Edinburgh University are also located close by. The leasehold is offered at a guide price of £45,000 and an annual rent of £14,000. That article was by Brian Donnelly. This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday, the 30th of July 2025, from the business section. Services supplier CommsWorld shrugs off inflationary strain. This article is by Christy Dorsey. Scottish services provider CommsWorld weathered last year's inflationary pressures as profits held up on revenues that were broadly flat. Operator of the largest privately owned high-speed core network in the UK, CommsWorld secured one of the largest contracts in its 30-year history during 2024 in the form of a 5-year £35 million agreement to provide network services to Glasgow City Council. This includes the replacement of legacy networks with 5G capabilities. Steve Langmead, who was appointed Chief Executive of CommsWorld in 2021, said the marginal increases in turnover and profit showed the company has managed to absorb the impact of inflation on our business. That is because we continue to focus on CommsWorld's strengths, delivering high-quality, flexible, robust, and resilient services to our customers, while also achieving financial stability through our bigger, longer-term contracts with local authorities across the UK, he said. Future challenges include helping businesses and organisations through the public switched telephone network shutdown, ensuring the withdrawal is managed in the best possible way to guarantee a smooth transition and minimal disruption. Revenue rose to £36.9 million in 2024 from £36.5 million the previous year, while pre-tax profits rose by £100,000 to £4.7 million. During the year, CommsWorld also completed construction of Northumberland County Council's core network build, replacing its WAN and laying 262 kilometres of new full fibre infrastructure serving employees in 150 council sites. Another highlight was the upgrading of connectivity in 42 schools in and around Dundee, as part of a £2.6 million contract over 10 years with the local council. Founded in 1994, Edinburgh-based CommsWorld employs 140 people, serving customers from the public and private sector. Other councils on the company's client roll include Edinburgh, North Lanarkshire, Renfrewshire, and the Scottish Borders. Mr. Langmead said the results for 2024 were broadly in line with the board's expectations. Our primary aim as a company is to continue to grow and evolve, win more big contracts, and set the standard through our optical core network so we can grow throughout the whole of the UK, especially in remote areas of the country desperately in need of better connectivity, he added. That article was by Christy Dorsey.
That concludes this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Review and Review, and to tell your friends about our service.